On this episode of INN CEO Talks, I'm really excited to be welcoming Brad Douville of Greenlane Renewables because this is a really interesting Vancouver or lower mainland British Columbia company that's addressing very, very real biogas challenges, but taking that biogas and turning it into a renewable and reusable resource. And they're already having great success, even though they're still a relatively young company. Brad, welcome to this episode of CEO Talks. I always like to ask all my guests, what's your symbol and what market can viewers find you on?
Greenlane Renewables, and our trading symbol is GRN on the TSX Venture.
Tell us a little bit about the company. Where did the idea come from for this company, and how did you then start to roll it out?
Well, Greenlane, we took it public last year, so we started trading on the Venture Exchange in June of last year. But the company's, although we're a new listing, we're not a new company.
Right.
So it really started about 30 years ago. So long before there was really much recognition of renewable natural gas. And the fundamental principle is to replace fossil natural gas in the gas distribution network with a renewable form. Everybody knows about wind and solar and hydro. These are common ways to clean up the electricity grid. Not so many people know just yet, it's kind of our coming out industry, is that you can green the gas grid. And of course, natural gas and electricity, those are the two methods to provide energy to most all things, homes, businesses, and factories. So you got one of two choices, and you have to green them both. So that's really the genesis and what we're all about.
Well, one of the things that I think is important is that you're saying this is an established company. We have products and services, and we have a network that we're already feeding into, and we have revenues. I was looking at your quarterly report that you issued just about a month and a half ago, and you're making money, and your revenues were up. What has happened that you've seen? And it was a pretty significant jump. What happened that fueled this growth in revenues?
Well, there's a bunch of things happening. I mean, the most notable one that pretty much everyone knows about is the Paris Accord in 2014, at the end of 2014. That was obviously a coming together recognition of the increased importance of taking action on climate change. That translated into a lot of things, but I can back up even further. Back in 2005, George W. Bush, of all people, put in place an energy bill in the U.S., and that actually turned into a really important piece of legislation for renewable natural gas. But that wasn't really known until maybe 6 years ago or so. And so what this is that if you're a distributor of gasoline or diesel fuel in the U.S., you're obligated to take a certain renewable content. And if you don't have that in your fuel, you have to buy these credits. Renewable natural gas qualifies for those. It's the most valuable of those because it drives the deepest carbon cuts. And so these are some of the things that have driven the underlying growth of our market, or our industry.
So, as far as your company is concerned, are you producing, the systems that you're then supplying others who would become end users, or are you also contracting and running those services as well for other operators?
Yeah, so maybe it's helpful to back up a little bit. So what our business does is we are a leading supplier of what we call biogas upgrading equipment, or
Mm-hmm.
biogas upgrading systems. So we take biogas, which is produced from the decomposition of organic matter, which could come from a landfill, it could come from a wastewater treatment plant, it could come from a farm, dairy manure or swine manure. So these materials, they decompose, and then they produce biogas. Well, what's that? Well, it's basically a mixture, roughly half of carbon dioxide and methane. In this case, it's biomethane because it comes from renewable sources. Our technology, we cleanse the impurities. We separate the carbon dioxide from the biomethane to create high purity biomethane, which is then suitable for pipeline injection or direct use in vehicles. So this is gas utilities are a key player in all this. So Fortis BC and Énergir in Quebec, for example, they're both leading utilities in Canada. SoCal Gas in Southern California, they've all put in place ambitious targets between 10 and 20% of their distributed gas by 2030. They expect to be renewable natural gas.
So they have a real need. As you're talking, I realize you can answer a question that I've had for a little while. Is biogas or methane from cows and any other decomposition, once you've cleaned it, does it wind up having being that same CH4 compound that we get from natural gas that we use, that we extract from the ground?
Yeah, it's chemically identical. So the methane
Okay.
molecule is the methane molecule, whether it came from geological era with what we typically call geological natural gas or fossil natural gas. It's the same methane molecule as renewable natural gas. So the importance of that is it's a fully drop-in fuel. The key
Yeah.
difference, of course, is that it doesn't come along with all the baggage of the carbon.
Well, and
So
you
it's
don't
low
have.
carbon. In some cases, it's actually, if you're taking it from sources like dairy, you actually have negative carbon intensity, which seems crazy, but it's the same effect as if you're removing carbon from the atmosphere.
Well, and if we take a look at the whole flow of carbon that comes sequestered into the plants and the foods that the cows eat, and we're turning it into methane and we're using it there, we're also helping to reduce the carbon footprint of agriculture as well. So it's a really good flow system because you're not creating new GHG gases that are being extracted from below the surface.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, there's co-benefits of this, and there's so many pieces to this. It's really
Yeah.
truly full circle. Is you take these what would otherwise be waste products, you process them in an anaerobic digester. You get the biogas, which we then process and inject into the pipeline to displace fossil gas, and that drives decarbonization of that energy system. But then you get these other benefits where you create this valuable digestate, which then gets spread on the fields. You take all the nasties out of that solids, and you spread that, and also you have liquids coming out of it too to irrigate. So it's really full circle, and it's a wonderful opportunity, especially in the agricultural space. But not only there, wastewater treatment plants and capturing that off gas from landfills.
Yeah, because you wind up with the same product, don't you? And so once again, you're creating an environmental benefit, and at the same time generating economic opportunity. Like this is the kind of innovation that we need to address environmental challenges that we're facing. So tell me a little bit about your team and the innovative brain power that's behind it that is helping you to advance the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, what we did was I mentioned already that we launched the company on the TSXV last June. We did that because we felt the time was right. To be honest,
Hmm.
it's been a pretty nascent market, but in the recent years, it started to kick up. We've seen that in our sales pipeline. We've had over the last several quarters 60% quarter over quarter growth in our order book, in our
Hmm.
backlog, which will translate into revenue in the coming quarters. So we launched the company on a public basis because we felt the time was now, and I think we're seeing evidence of that in our sales. Um, and We did that in order to really capitalize on this global market opportunity. In terms of the team, my background, I've been with the business for almost 3 years. Before that, I was 25 years in the commercial natural gas space. So the first question you should ask is 25 years ago, well, actually 28 years ago, there was really no such thing as commercial natural gas vehicles. So this was natural gas buses, natural gas trucks. Um, and it's been an exciting career because when we started that business, and I was one of the co-founders of a company in Vancouver called Westport Innovations, which today is called Westport
Yes.
Fuel System. We
Right.
went on to create a joint venture with Cummins, one of the world's largest diesel manufacturers, called Cummins
Hmm.
Westport. We
Right.
launched that in 2001, supplying today all the engines for trucks and buses,
Right.
not only in North America but in other global markets. And so these install base of natural gas vehicles has turned into a ready-made opportunity for renewable natural gas. So what started
Right.
as a natural gas industry has turned into a renewable natural gas industry. What's happened there in the transportation space in the U.S., for example, is all those natural gas vehicles that myself and by the way, there's a few other board members and colleagues that I brought onto the board so that we could do successful launch of this business on the public markets, capitalize on that experience, and so they were part of the Westport ecosystem. Um, so when we launched these natural gas vehicles and helped create that natural gas vehicle industry, um, all that natural gas was getting replaced by renewable natural gas. Today in the US, the last 5 years, it's grown. Renewable natural gas penetration into that space has grown fourfold over the last 5 years, and it now represents 39% of all the fuel consumed is renewable, which is really a remarkable statistic if you think about it. If you thought
Yeah.
if you could get to 39% of all the gasoline consumed in the country, that would be a remarkable feat.
It's extraordinary. So you touched on the fact that this is a nascent sector, so it's really hard to know what the future is. But because there is just going to be just this continual growing need for renewables and renewable gas, how do we project what the near future might look like as far as being able to, meet that need and the kind of opportunity that it provides for your company?
Well, it's always fun trying to predict the future, but we do have a few precedents. And one reasonable proxy for what this market might look like is if you look at solar and wind. So solar and wind to the electricity grid is renewable natural gas to the gas grid. Except we're probably 10 to 15 years behind that growth curve. So today we know in the electricity space, the only growing sector is renewables, and it's really all about wind and solar. In fact, those have been commoditized to some degree. There's a big push on to deploy those globally, and there's large amounts of capital flow going into those kinds of projects. We're starting to see the signs of that today. We are still in early stages. Globally, it's less than 1% penetration of renewable natural gas into the total gas that's distributed and consumed globally. But we see the signs. We see the flows of investment capital. We see the kinds of companies that are coming into this. A great example is BP. They've earlier this year they announced their ambition to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Through mid-year, they replaced their entire executive team. 2 weeks ago, they launched their global strategy in a very detailed way in their investor week. And these guys are serious. I mean, they're transforming this whole company, and they laid out a comprehensive strategy as to how they're going to get there. So they're going to start to get into wind and solar assets. They're already in those today, but they're also today the largest buyer and trader of renewable natural gas. So they're on our space. We work with them. They're one of our partners, go-to-market strategy. So that's one example of the kind of heft that we're starting to see. We've seen some other companies, GDF Suez, now called Engie in France. They've been at this longer than BP. They transformed their company. They sold off their oil assets. They've held a few gas assets because gas is the bridge to the cleaner future. And now they're a renewables business, and they're very big into this renewable natural gas space. So that's a couple examples just to show that we might be on a similar trajectory that wind and solar were in the electricity grid.
So immediately, right now, what are you focused on that is going to sort of move you into next stages?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So historically, our business model has been we sell the system. So we have a team of engineers who will work with the client, will specify the systems, we'll sell it. We get paid over a period of time through milestone payments. We advanced that business model to now offer upgrading as a service. So we put a deal together earlier this year with a green infrastructure fund out of Paris, France. This is a company called Swen Capital Partners. They have 5 billion euros under management. We put a joint venture together where they bring the money, we bring the pipeline of opportunities, the technical knowledge, and of course the biogas upgrading systems. So that's one of the things that we did. We recognized that we could help facilitate further growth by bringing capital. In this case, a partner's capital to the table. The other thing that we're doing is in the realm of project development. So this is where it might be a green field, it might be a farm. But there's nothing going on in terms of a project yet. So you need this. There's this highly fragmented space of project developers, varying degrees of expertise and competence and money. So we're focused right now on putting partnerships together that will help bring specialized capital into that specific knowledge. We have a lot of that embedded in our company that we can offer as help to get these projects. And then, of course, what we're after is the sale of the biogas upgrading system. But we can bring all these other pieces to the table, in part with the internal expertise that we have in the business, and in other parts with the kind of partners that we have in the industry.
Okay, that's pretty exciting. Because my mind just starts reeling off in about 100 different directions, thinking that this market for you is filled with limitless potential because there's so many sources of gas that you're able to start to tap into and build upon. I think your challenge is going to be like how do we build this out before we jump to that and go to the next, because the world really is going to be beating a path to what you're doing. So how do you? I know this may sound a little bit ridiculous, but how do you have the discipline to say, no, this is the path that we're going to go down, and we're gonna build out that structure that allows us to do take on other aspects into the future?
Yeah, how do we focus, or do we focus is really the key question. There is a lot of opportunity. You're exactly right. There is some structure that's forming in the industry. I mean, there's certain segments. So we've been, our biggest segment to date has been wastewater treatment plants. That's selling to municipalities. There's kind of a well understood pathway there that we've been doing for a long time. Landfills is another big market sector. And then some of the other sectors are agriculture. We talked about dairy farms or manure from cows or pigs. The thing is that there's more than just us, and what we're trying to do is to build a platform. That's probably why we went public, was so that we could create a platform that would add value in a lot of different ways. So at our core, we sell the biogas upgrading equipment, but it's really sitting in a central place of this industry. We have project developers who come to us looking for equipment, but then we're able to make the connections between them and our financial partners. We're able to bring other competencies that they may need to get the projects fully developed, ready for financial close and start of construction. So, our path to success is really continuing to build our industry relationships. One of the things that we did last year, the end of last year, we put together something called the Integrated Biogas Alliance. And what that is a collection of global companies, not unlike Greenlane, who supply different parts of any project. So we don't do anaerobic digesters, for example, but other people do. But those are needed. You got to park one of those next to the equipment that Greenlane provides. So that's an example of the kind of relationships and partnerships that we're putting together to conquer this big, wide opportunity that's sitting in front of us.
So do those relationships help you to consolidate your place in that marketplace? Because as you say, it's a network. And if you have these established relationships, do you then help to, I guess, keep competition at bay a little bit because they can't get into those relationship networks that are clearly required for this sector?
Yeah, well, if we can get involved in a more comprehensive and helpful way with the project developers, then they'll get to know us better. They'll get comfortable that we know what we're talking about. They'll get the comfort that they can trust us to provide systems that work. And because we're in early and providing that value, then it helps assure that we'll get the order when it comes to financial close and ready for construction of the project.
We've already been talking for more than about 25 minutes. Somebody might be going, okay, Brad, what's the opportunity for me to get in and support you at this point?
Well, in terms of evaluation, when we've gone public, we've been listed for just over a year now. We're still fairly early in this effort to create awareness for the company. There's still some awareness happening with RNG. You ask anyone on the sidewalk, they'll know what wind and solar are, but they may not know what renewable natural gas is. So we think that we're undervalued in terms of our share price reflecting the true opportunity that's sitting in front of us. I think some of that will come out very, very soon. Our like I commented on, our sales backlog has been growing the last several quarters, 60% quarter over quarter. We'll see that translate directly into sales. So it's a great time to get in and participate with some interesting upside.
Well, I think that it's a really exciting opportunity because this is one of the very issues that so many people are saying we need to address. I just so you know, I just did an interview recently with a fellow by the name of Seth Klein, who wrote a book called A Good War, and the whole focus is on how do we reduce our carbon footprint here in Canada, and what he is suggesting that needs to be realized is exactly what you're doing. You're already ahead of the curve. So congratulations. And thank you for giving us this insight into your company right now. And I'm hoping that you'll come back in the future and tell us how well it's going.
I'd be pleased to, Stu. That'd be great.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you.